This narrative is going to cover Chapter 3 in the classroom manual primarily, but also some of the material in the shop manual on automotive tools and equipment. We're going to learn about using the right tool for the right job. Most successful technicians know the name and very specific usages of their tools. And a typical journeyman 10-year technician may have $100,000 invested in tools and tool storage. Hand tools rely on the technician's effort and muscles. Power tools rely on electricity, compressed air, or hydraulics. One of the key things about tools, and you will have an investment in tools, so you will appreciate cleaning and maintenance. Clean your tools after you get done using them, store them in a secure location, and typically maintain them as needed. Electric, air, or hydraulic tools can have a maintenance cycle involved. Most common hand tools will typically be discussed are wrenches. The size of the wrench is determined by the nut or the bolt which it fits. The head of the bolt or the nut determine the size of the wrench, not the diameter. An example would be a 3/8 inch diameter bolt might need a wrench size of a 1/2 inch, 9/16, or 5/8, depending on the specific bolt and its applications. Wrenches can be either metric or US standard measurement. Open-end wrenches are the most common type of wrench. They are opened at one end and are placed on a nut or a bolt. It makes it easier to turn in tighter places. These are some examples. You can see in the upper left, the 14mm bolt fits the 14mm bolt head. We have no idea what the diameter of that bolt is. We simply know that the head of the bolt is 14mm. This is an example of a dual open-end wrench and samples of how to work a wrench in tight places and why open-end wrenches are the best for that purpose. Box-end wrenches are the next common types. These fit completely around the nut or the bolt. There usually is less slippage, and this is what you want to use on an extremely tight nut or bolt. If you pay close attention, that the wrench on the top has actually got a 6-point configuration. The wrench on the bottom has got a 12-point configuration. The 6-point is primarily what we want for loosening and tightening. It gives us maximum grip. The 12-point can be used for closer accommodations where we don't have as much swing or mobility in using the wrench. They both have their purpose, but typically the 6-point is the most critical for tightening or loosening. Combination wrenches include an open end on one end and a box end on another. As you'll notice in this picture, the upper wrench has a 12-point, the lower wrench has a 6-point. Again, these are options that you have to pick carefully when you purchase your tools. One of the common things we see today are what we call gear wrenches. They work like a box end, but they have a ratchet internally. They may not stand up to real high torque applications, but they are very convenient and useful when it comes to quick application of rotating motion. Next most common type of wrench that we're going to see is referred to as a socket wrench, usually just as sockets. Sockets are separate from the driver. They're interchangeable, so we can have multiple sets of sockets and one wrench. So these are some samples. In the lower right corner, you see a 6-point, an 8-point, and a 12-point socket. These are typically what we'll see. On the left, you'll see how a 1/2 inch square drive fits into a 1/2 inch square drive socket. This is how they're rated. These are some samples of ratchets. These are the common tools that we use with sockets, a variety of different sizes and shapes. We have fixed head, flex head, small, examples of 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch. Ratchets can go to 1/2 inch, even to 3/4 or 1 inch in some heavy industrial applications. Typically, the wrench will be pulled toward you to tighten. That gives you your best force. The levers on the wrench is what's used to adjust whichever way you want it to go. One of the things some technicians will use is what we call a speed driver. This is basically almost old school, like a crank, where you can take and turn it and use it as a spinner for a quick removal or installation of a nut or bolt. Some of the accessories that we go with ratchets and sockets are extensions and U-joints. On the left, you'll see 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch drive extensions of different lengths. On the right, you'll see what we call U-joints or wobbles. These will go between the socket and the ratchet, or the socket and the extension. These are used when you don't have a direct access to a bolt or a nut. Also, on some occasions, you'll see what we have here. The socket will actually be an integral part of these universals, and that's what we refer to when we say wobbles. That's a socket with its own individual universal joint. They're more convenient for closer access and close quarters. One of the common tools that you'll have in your box is an adjustable wrench. These come in different lengths based on the size. You'll notice here that there is a right and a wrong way to use an adjustable wrench. These can be referred to as crescent wrenches or adjustable wrenches. Crescent is typically a brand name. Adjustable wrench is the generic name. Another type of wrench is an Allen wrench. You'll see this is a 6-sided wrench that fits into a 6-sided socket head. These are typically used in various applications. We can also have sockets with Allen ends on them, as illustrated in the picture on the right. Torque wrenches are another application that we have for specialty use in the automotive industry. Torque wrenches ensure that we get the proper tightening on nuts and bolts. They can be calibrated in either foot-pounds for SAE or US measurements, or Newton meters for metric measurements. Illustrated here, we have 3 types of torque wrenches. Lower left is what we refer to as a beam type wrench. This is where the beam bends as you turn, and that little needle pointer will indicate the amount of torque we're using. The one on the lower right is what we call a click type. This can be set to a specific torque reading, and when we get to that torque reading, we'll feel a click or a detent when we have the proper torque. On the upper right, you'll see dial indicator type torque wrenches. This will actually indicate the actual torque that the wrench is applying with the dial indicator, and you can read it. These are very useful in close and accurate measurements. Some specialty wrenches. On the left, we have a brake bleeder wrench. The wrenches on the right are examples of flare nut or line wrenches. You can see, as I've illustrated in that one picture, the other end in greater detail. It's actually got 6 points illustrated there, but we have one end open. So this gives us a much better grip on a line like for brakes or fuel lines. So these are a specialty wrench. Another common tool in the box will be pliers. We can have a standard pliers as you see on the lower left, or we can have a needle nose pliers as we see on the right. Another common tool is often referred to as a channel lock pliers or adjustable pliers or water pump pliers. Again, this is a case channel lock was the brand name that came out with this design wrench. They come in handy, and they also come in a variety of different sizes. Another common hand tool is the diagonal cutting pliers, also known as wire cutters or side cutters. These are typically used to cut wire or cotter pins. Some special purpose pliers are illustrated here. Number 1 lower left is a battery pliers used to clean and expand battery terminals. Number 2 is a crimping tool that we can use to crimp solderless connectors on wires. And number 3 would be the multifunction brake tool. This can be used for a variety of different things. One end is used to take dust caps off the wheel. The other side is almost like a hammer that can be used to put them on. The other ends of the tool on the handle are also used for special purposes. Some more common hand tools are snap ring pliers. These are used to install and remove snap rings, inside and outside snap rings. Vice grips. It's a locking pliers. Vice grip is a brand name again. but this is a locking type pliers, adjustable jaw, and able to clamp and lock onto a device, lock onto something like a nut or a bolt. Screwdrivers are several types of screwdrivers and different types of tips. Most common is a flat slot, and that is typically what we see on the lower left. On the right, we see what we refer to as a Phillips in a couple different configurations. Recessed head screwdrivers are illustrated here by the sockets with that type of a tip, where we actually have what we call a Phillips, where the 4 points or star goes down into the screw. We also have a Torx type, which is a 6-prong fastener, and many automotive uses today use that because for assembly purposes, the manufacturers like Torx as opposed to hex or Phillips. Offset screwdrivers can be used in a bunch of applications where you're in tight spaces and can't get in with a regular screwdriver. You can use an offset screwdriver. Hammers. Basically, hammers have two parts, the handle and the head. This is an example of a ball peen hammer. You see the peen end and this flat face. This is a very common automotive hammer. This is a plastic hammer. It has actually different hardnesses of plastic. The gray and the black are different hardnesses, so they can be used for different purposes. Some specialty hammers are the brass hammers on the top, rubber mallet on the bottom. Punches, files, these can be used with ball peens to drive pins out or to center mark a punch to be drilled. There's examples. Some punches and files here are on the left. We have a center punch, which is used for starting a drill bit. We have an aligning punch, which is used for aligning two different components together so we can get a bolt in. Pneumatic and electric tools, air-operated ratchets and drivers need air to turn them and typically have a maintenance schedule. Impact wrenches, air-operated wrench, a powerful driver, must use an impact socket with these types of devices. A standard silver SAE or metric socket will typically be broken when we use them with these impacts. So you have to have the black impact socket. It's much thicker wall and much stronger. Torque sticks are a device that we use when tightening different lug nuts on a car. Typically, these are used to assure that we reach the proper torque on wheel lug nuts. Different colors represent different torque ranges. Chisels are used for cutting rivet heads or splitting nuts. Twist drills are when we need to drill something for whatever reason with an electric drill motor. Reamers are a device that gives us a precision hole. It's used to accurately open up a hole to a specific tolerance. Hacksaws are used to cut metal. Varying blade teeth per inch can be used for softer metals like aluminum or harder metals like steel. Files removed for smoothing, shaping. Threading tools, replacing threads in automotive parts. Taps and dies. Typically a tap creates an inside thread and a die cleans up an outside thread. Helicoils are one of the things that we use to repair damaged threads in a hole. Different gear and bearing pullers can be used for pulling bearings and other items, seals out of tight areas. One of the things we'll see more of in a coming video is the jack stand wheel blocks and jacks as used in jacking and lifting vehicles in the shop. Lifts, single post, double post will be covered in a lifting video. Scissors and drive-ons are typically used for lower lifting applications like brake or tire service. This is an example of a scissors lift. Some of the specialty tools we have are vacuum testers, pressure testers, and electrical instruments. There's a full supply of those in the electrical class. We also deal with ProDemand in our shop. This is where we have the computerized data and storage. It's a manual to tell us all the repair and special information that we need. In other words, wrenches are determined by the head of the bolt or nut that they fit. Hammers and other tools have an appropriate application. Always use the proper lifting device and do not exceed the capabilities. Electronic test equipment and service information are available in the shop.